Hello everyone! Today we are going to be taking a look at a watercolor sketchbook of sorts. I do want to be completely upfront that calling this sketchbook a sketchbook with an emphasis on sketch is not quite accurate. It is filled with watercolor studies and it includes things that I have painted just for fun as well as paintings that I filmed for tutorials and reviews. It also has some pieces that I don't love in it, but regardless, the mindset I had for this sketchbook has been different than the mindset I've had for other sketchbooks. At the same time that I was filling this sketchbook, I was also working on two other sketchbooks. I have a true sketchbook full of miscellaneous sketches, different mixed media studies, and just kind of practicing, planning, all of that kind of stuff in this sketchbook. And then I also have a sketchbook that is focused on studying human anatomy, and so each sketchbook has its own purpose. Me and my ADHD are not known for our follow-through on projects, and countless times I've started sketchbooks and given up partway or rushed through the end of something just to be over and done with it. So you might think that having 3 sketchbooks would spell disaster and I wouldn't complete any of them, but it has actually helped me stay on task. I just finished this one. I'm nearly finished with this one, and this one has a way to go, but that's another story. The big difference is that when I've tried to do a sketchbook before, like a single sketchbook and just work on the one at a time, I might get discouraged if I did something I didn't like and try and tear it out or cover it up, which there's some cover-ups in here, we'll get there. But something would discourage me from wanting to finish the whole thing. And so by having a place where I can just throw my thoughts, my notes, my studies, my planning in, and having a different sketchbook for proper watercolor studies, it's really helped me to stay motivated across all the different books. So with all that being said, let's jump in to my watercolor studies sketchbook. I started this sketchbook on a road trip actually. I am from California, but I lived in Texas for a couple of years and had just moved to Oregon earlier this year in 2022, and I was driving home for the first time in a long time to visit some family. So I really liked keeping the theming for this book. I was doing kind of like a California to Oregon thing, and this is the western meadowlark, which is the Oregon state bird. I was in a hotel room when I painted this, and I remember very specifically, and you can tell by the strokes on this page, that I was using a water brush, so the kind of brushes that hold water in the barrel, and it definitely suffers from that. I can definitely see those strokes. My favorite thing about this painting isn't actually the painting itself, it's that the last page in this book ended up being another yellow bird on accident. So we'll get there, but I think it's really fun. The sketchbook ended up being bookended by these 2 yellow birds. Also on this trip, I got to meet up with an art friend of mine, and we sat in the park and did some art for a while. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I remember in the moment I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this while I'm traveling. Obviously you can see I'm not the best when I'm not at home at my art desk. But this one turned out really, really nicely. It's painted with 2 colors. It's just manganese violet and shadow violet from Roman Schmal. And the reference photo was one of my own pictures that I took when I went to Botswana back in 2013, which is a long time ago now at this point. Anyway, this little guy isn't my most popular design, but if you like him and want to give him some love, there are stickers in my shop, and I enjoy him very much. Also on this trip, on the way home, I drove up the California coast. I spent a year of college in Humboldt County, California. Met up with friends there. We went to the zoo, and they have these birds that they're pretty big. They're pretty big birds. They're called crested screamers, and they come up to maybe, I'm a tall person, I'm like 5'10", and I want to say they came up at least to my knee, if not higher. They were pretty far away, but they're really cool, and I wanted to do a little sketch of them. Next, we have the first of many tutorial paintings in this book. I'm not going to say Patreon tutorial every time because I don't want you to get tired of hearing it, but whenever I say tutorial in this video, I'm talking about a Patreon tutorial. They are available. I also might refer to live streams, and if that's the case, those are also available on Patreon. I will note if I mean that they're on a different platform or if they're in a YouTube video. So this is a fruit bat, and it was painted with Etchr watercolors. I was really pleased with how this turned out. I don't love the kind of face and body, but I was most worried about the wings, and I feel like I did them very successfully. I was using Payne's Gray from Etchr, which I ended up absolutely loving. I need to open that palette more often. It was really fun, but I just love how the values and the folds of the wings worked out. It was so much fun to paint. The next painting is a great blue heron, great blue heron. There we go. This was a testing painting for my DaVinci Embrace Opacity palette. So while we were developing that palette, I was trying to work out the combinations and see what we needed to fine tune. And at one point we were trying to test out a cool brown color that had like a rich undertone. I didn't end up going forward with that paint color, but this includes that. Covered up. That's why it wasn't in any of the Embrace Opacity palette images that you saw, but lives here in my sketchbook. This next page is also testing that brown. I really wanted to make sure that I had made up my mind about whether or not I wanted to include it, and this painting did in fact solidify that for me. The next page is our first cover up, and honestly, I don't even remember what was under here. I just remember I hated it. I hated it so bad. I had tried to cover it up with different opaque mediums. I tried to cover it up with white gouache. I couldn't get the page to lay flat. So finally, very recently, so this painting was from August of 2022. This was done in February of 2024. On a piece of arches, I did a painting for the Renaissance review video that I did a couple videos ago, and I went ahead and glued it on in here. And then on the next page, if you've been around the channel for a while, you'll recognize some of these. These were for the actual release of my Embrace Opacity palette. We needed artwork for the packaging, we needed artwork for the videos, and all of that. So starting with the secretary bird, I love secretary birds. This was painted in September of 2022, and this uses a surprising amount of colors from the palette, even though it's not like overly bright and colorful. So we've got some of our warmer tones in the face, we've got the blues and greens in the background, we've got Denise's gray in the body, and the stormy blue in the darker areas. So I have a really special place in my heart for this one. I love it so much. Then we move in to the paintings that I did specifically for the YouTube video to show off this palette's capabilities. So again, I really love these cooler tones in the palette. I marked each of the paintings with which colors they use so that we could talk about those. This was in December. I also did a swan that is hopefully visible on your screen as being just kind of like a nice pastel muted. Just trying to make sure the camera doesn't wash it out. Anyway, that was the painting I was definitely least comfortable with, but I still like how it turned out. Maybe the head more than the body. Next, we kind of jump around. There are more Embrace Opacity paintings in here, but I had left this side of the page blank, I think, to put like 2 more little studies on it, but then I ended up doing full page studies and I needed more space. So this one I did much later, but keeping with September, I was volunteering at a local wildcat rescue, and they have a domestics area as well. And these were 2 of the cats there. I did pour Pearl a little bit dirty. She's so cute, and I didn't quite get her anatomy right. It's not not my best work, but I love how Morpheus turned out. Really, really beautiful colors. Yeah, I'm just really happy. Both of these were painted with Roman Schmal. I tried to make little paint notes here when I remembered to, so that when we were doing this video, I could let you know. We're gonna come back to those 2, but here we have the other 2 Embrace Opacity video paintings. We've got the wildebeest and the seal. And yeah, you guys have seen these before on the channel, but they were still really fun to paint. And the goal between all 4 of these images were just to show off as many of the colors as we could in the palette and all the different vibes they could create. We're a tiny bit out of order still, but just so we don't leave them behind, this page is fine. It's not my favorite in the sketchbook. So I did the koala first, and this is with the Embrace Opacity palette, but just for my own benefit. I really love the background, which is the green mixed with the violet iron oxide. We've got Denise's gray and stormy blue, of course. For those who might be new, we've had a lot of new subscribers. Welcome, thank you for being here. I have chronic pain, and so my body doesn't always work the way I want it to, and I can't paint with my sketchbook on an angle because my shoulder doesn't allow for me to support the weight of my arm. It has to like rest on the table. So a thing that you might see throughout my work and throughout my paintings, particularly my sketchbook, I try harder when they're real pieces, is that perspective wise, when I'm sketching, things that are closer to my body are bigger, like this giant foot, than the rest of the painting. And I try and check my work and that kind of thing, but sometimes it still gets away from me. So the perspective isn't great here. Feet are too big, but otherwise it's fine. I don't think the kookaburra is very successful. I was trying to work with an underpainting, and I think that to be successful, I would have needed a true white. I was trying to use the buff titanium that is in that palette, but it needed something a little bit more to separate it from the background a bit better. This was painted for the A Gallo review on my channel in January of 2023. This is a cassowary, still going with Australia, I guess. And you can see me paint that painting in that video. I love the background on this. It is painted with one of the reds and the greens, I believe, from that palette, and it just turned out so beautifully. I think the last piece of like merchandise painting that I had to do was when we came out with the enhancing trio. What did we call it? The Moody 2 trio is what we ended up naming it. These were 3 colors that I picked specifically to add some pizzazz, some pow to the Embrace Opacity palette. These colors are not opaque themselves, but they help add to that palette. For the packaging, Da Vinci wanted a painting just using these 3 colors in case someone was purchasing them and not putting them with the larger palette, if that makes sense. So this was the painting for that. It ended up being a Patreon print as well. But yeah, just a little ladybug. I don't paint bugs very often. They're not my favorite, but I think it turned out nice. Next, we have one of my least favorite and one of my favorite paintings in the entire sketchbook. So this was another underpainting fail. I was using the stone ground gouache this time, and so we had a little bit more opacity, but I still didn't have a white with that palette. It was still like an off-white, so we're still lacking that contrast we need. But this one I think went way better. The background for this one too, this is stone ground gouache. The background is the lilac from the Da Vinci palette. This is terracotta from the Da Vinci Embrace Opacity palette. And then the top, again, is stone ground. I love this little rat. It was our print last month on Patreon. It's just so cute. I love those whiskers. And this is the first time I finally felt like I was getting somewhere with underpaintings. I still need a lot more work with them, but it was a lot of fun. And I love his little toes. The next theme that you'll see in this sketchbook kind of come up a few times are working with handmade watercolors. So this one is made with Etchr Creations. It's an Indian company. There will be another video on my channel pretty soon with these paints, but this is one of, if not the first painting I did with them. I think it was the first one. I was trying out some of their natural tones. They have a lot of earth tones. So these are the colors that went into the elk. And in the background, I kid you not, is one of their specialty greens. I didn't mix that. It came that way. Stay tuned for that and we can take a closer look at those colors. This was painted during a live stream for my Patreon. We don't always do painting in live streams, but we did on this day, but then my shoulder started acting up and so we had to wrap things up. I'm also not the fastest painter when it comes to working in real time and talking to people, as you might gather. Multitasking, not my strong suit. But anyway, this is, I was gonna finish it and then I didn't. And I didn't feel the need to, so it's okay. We skipped this page for now and then moved to this one chronologically. So this was Cozy Paints. This is an Etsy seller, Courtney Zimmerman, and these are her paints. I painted a little spoonbill and a starling. These were also on a live stream and I really like how they turned out. Both of them ended up as stickers. This was a Patreon sticker for February of this year, and then this one is available in my shop. We can come back over to this painting now, chronologically speaking. In the summer of 2023, I took a little trip up to see some friends in Seattle. We went to the zoo. I have more of those sketches in this sketchbook. But towards the end of that trip, I was feeling a little bit, I needed to recharge my spoons. I needed to spend some alone time in the forest. So before I came home, I rented a cabin for a night in the woods and just took my sketchbooks and went and sat in the trees. It was beautiful and wonderful. So this was the first painting I did on the trip. It's not great. It's not a masterpiece. I'm kind of embarrassed that you've been looking at this whole time I've been talking. But this was again with the Etchr paints. I was trying to use as many colors as possible so I could get a good feel for them. But I don't love the way that this shoe build turned out. But also in that cabin, I got to paint this spread, which is one of my favorite in the book. These were all pictures that I took at the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle on that same trip. I was looking at the viewfinder and the camera for these reference photos. So I did each one as a single paint color from Roman Schmal. I had brought a little curated set with me. So I have Goethite, Misty Morning, Shadow Violet, Ocean Blue. I don't know what they call it, but it's the Cobalt Green Deep equivalent. And then I think this is Aquarius Green. So I just took the bear, did a bunch of different poses. I think this one's my favorite. I really like it. This one is beautiful. I love that he's sniffing the flowers, but his body's not the right shape for a bear, so that's a bit of a bummer. In this one, he was walking down a hill, so he's on an angle. That's intentional. Next, we have another live stream. This is a great example of me not being able to talk and work at the same time. We definitely got some muddy colors in here. The sketch isn't great. We lost focus of the face, but I really love how this one turned out. I never turned it into a sticker, but I keep thinking I should, so let me know if you like this guy. Really, really fun to paint. I think this is where I got into like really angular lines, which I still like to do today. So I think that was start to that style for me. Opposite of the passenger pigeon, we have the rhino that I recently painted for the Renaissance review. This is the other cover up in this book. I think it's just the two. And so this was painted in February of 2024. I talk a lot about this painting in the Renaissance review, so if you want to check that out, I'll try and leave a link up here for you. The softness of these paints really worked out well, and I think because I was thinking low pressure sketchbook piece, I was able to get a lot looser washes than I normally do. You know, sometimes we just put that pressure on ourselves and things don't turn out right. So I feel like this was successful because I didn't have that pressure. The next page is super fun. This was done with stone ground gouache, and not too long after I went to the Woodland Park Zoo in Seattle, I had friends visiting me here, and we went to the Oregon Zoo in Portland, and we were in the aviary watching the birds. I love being in the aviaries because you have so many animals in a space, so you get to see the dynamics and get to watch everyone. There were spoonbills sitting on their nests. There was an ibis that was eating food out of the water. There were geese being cute. And there were flamingos. Some were minding their business and some were not. So these panels read from right to left because that's the direction that this bird was moving. It had been standing on top of like this giant bush and got off and walked past this flamingo that was just sitting on the ground, just chilling. And the flamingo straight up stepped on its back. Just like, I mean, they don't weigh very much, right? Like, the birds, but just out of nowhere stepped on this other one's back. They were squabbling. This guy was trying to defend himself, and it was just jerk flamingo move, and I had to paint it. I got the whole series on my camera while we were there. I came home, we were watching TV the next couple of days, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to commemorate this moment. This is where I started having a lot of fun with that stone ground gouache, and it was just a joy to work with. I especially love this kind of darker color back here. I don't remember what it's called, but it's one of their convenience colors. Also from that trip, we have a buff mountain goat. Thick boy. He was really fun to paint. I don't think I painted him for any specific reason other than I wanted to, which is great. It was painted with the Embrace Opacity palette again. I really wanted to play with these shadows, but I realized after the fact, the shadows are coming from a tree that's like over here off frame. And so I couldn't paint it in the frame, but it also doesn't make sense for there to be shadows if there's nothing above him. This happens sometimes, but I still had a lot of fun painting him, and it was real fun to get the very shapy body in there. On this side of the spread, I wanted to do another herbivore with the Embrace Opacity palette so that they kind of look like they go together. This was for a tutorial, and it was really fun to see because years ago we either did a tutorial, those words came too fast. We were doing a tutorial or a live stream over on Patreon, and I did a forward-facing Oryx in that one. And at the time, I remember thinking it was really good. And then when I compared it to this one, I was like, oh, I've gotten better. That's exciting. So it was really fun to see the growth over time. I believe this was also from one of my own reference photos from Africa. This next painting is a little bit lackluster, just a smidge. I really wanted to paint one of these cranes. It's a white naped crane from the Woodland Park Zoo references that I took. The reference photo had these gorgeous gradient cascading colors of feathers down the back, and I did not do that well. So I don't consider this super successful, but I do love bird shapes anyway, so I loved doing kind of like the neck here. I like the background color a lot, but yeah, it wasn't quite as successful as I was hoping. The next page is something really different for me. I was trying to play around with some stylization, and I wanted to do this doe. I love, if you couldn't already tell, I love doing studies with Shadow Violet from Roman Schmal. I have maybe just the one other one in this sketchbook, but I've definitely done other monochromatic studies with just this color because it breaks into purple and green, and it's super, super pretty. So I was really happy with how this turned out, and it ended up being my Patreon thank you / print for the holiday season. The next page was from earlier in the summer. We had gotten up to November, but we're back to August because I needed to work on this half of the sketchbook for a live stream that I was doing for the summer creative retreat. So I needed it to be framed properly, and I needed to be able to trace the reference so that everyone was working from the same image. But this was a night heron that I took a picture of at the Woodland Park Zoo earlier in the summer. And the lesson was on monochromatic value studies, I guess. What did I call that? I made a whole PDF about it. It's available on my Etsy shop, not this particular painting. This was specific to the live stream, but I put together a PDF. I did another study that was in shades of like a tealish blue color, and it was talking about painting 3 different layers. We have the yellow layer, the orange layer, and then like the dark violet iron oxide layer for this particular painting, and then kind of merging them together to get our values. I love this technique. I had so much fun making this PDF. Let me know if you've purchased that PDF, if you've taken the lesson, if you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see more lessons like that, because I had a lot of fun. Starting on the next page, we have a lot of little Patreon studies. I had decided in December that I wanted to revamp things for the new year. And so I wanted to do, instead of doing a quarterly print and monthly postcards, I was going to switch to doing monthly prints and stickers. So I wanted to start creating some sticker designs. This was the January sticker, this little lynx, and this was going to be the February sticker, but we'll get into that in a moment. Little cover up there, he didn't turn out the way I wanted him to, got way overworked way quickly, but this lynx was paired, I wanted to do like a feline theme, so the January print was this stargazing lion. This was a struggle in the painting itself, but I love the way that it turned out. I wanted to make sure to get these whimsical colors in there and still have it look kind of like a galaxy. And then I did do little constellations in here. They're not precise, but I did try to do like our constellations. So on the forehead here, I believe this is Leo, and then relative to Leo, I just did other constellations that you can kind of see from that point, kind of in the right areas. But I had so much fun with this one. This was the little dragon guy that actually made it into sticker form. Well, at the time of recording this video, I haven't seen it in the sticker form yet. This is the March sticker. This is Caspian. He is one of my D&D characters, like little pet baby Drake. So I was really happy to work on him. It's made mostly with terracotta and then some of like the cobalt turquoise and cobalt teal mixed with white to get that opacity over the watercolor. This was a failed design. Didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. We'll just move on. Then I wanted to do, this is kind of twofold. So this was painted for the Renaissance video. I've mentioned it twice before already. This was to test out the pan colors, and I did these ferrets. This is April's print, and then April's sticker is this happy little otter. We did the brainstorming for this sticker in a live stream, so I ended up painting it off camera, but I love how he turned out, and I think he's gonna make a great little sticker when I get to see him. To finish off this page, I did a manatee, very quick study down here for the Renaissance tubes again. I did 3 paintings for each of the tubes in the pan, so if you didn't see that video, that's why there's so many in here. I like to really thoroughly review paints when it's time to do that, so that I'm giving you accurate information. So I wanted to do lots of little test studies. This was supposed to be the dragon print that went along with the sticker, but I wasn't happy with the way that it turned out. I'm not great with body anatomy. I'm really good at details and I love painting portraits, but I still have a lot of work to do when it comes to anatomy. So I just didn't like the way that the structure came out. I think I could have executed it better. I ended up pairing the dragon with the rat because the colors were just too good. So I ended up putting those 2 together instead of using this one. He's still in here. He was in the Renaissance video. That is the last Renaissance piece, I believe, that we will see. On the other side here was another live stream. This was Etchr is in the finished portrait here. This is my friend's horse, Gabe, and it was really fun to paint him. It took way too long. I'm not good with the multitasking, so he took forever to paint and I ran out of steam. I went back to try and finish the rest of the page with a Gallo watercolors a little bit later, and while the first wash was drying, I got distracted and didn't come back to it. So my apologies, Gabe, but we did a nice portrait. We're in the final stretch here. We only have a couple more pages. This was the spread of iguanas that I did for the color spotlight for Phthalo Turquoise. And all of these paintings, sorry, I'm trying to keep it flat so it's in focus, All of these paintings were done using phthalo turquoise in some capacity. This one is like the brighter version with more transparent colors. We've got one with granulation here. We've got one with opaque colors over here, so buff titanium, violet iron oxide. In this one here, we backed way off of that phthalo turquoise, and we just have hints of little green in here with the phthalo turquoise being the black color as well, and brought in some orange. I loved this spread. The last full spread here are these Battleur eagles. I love these eagles so much. I don't know why I've never painted them before. I had reference photos from like the Fresno Zoo in California from like a decade plus ago. And I was like, why have I never painted these? They're so good and so fluffy. So on this side, I did these two first, and this one was done with more opaque colors, and this was done with more transparent colors. I'd love to know which one you like better. You can tell me both the pose and the colors if you want to separate those two, or let me know both of them. So very different vibes. We've got like very soft vibe over here and kind of a more intense vibe over here. And then I just had to capture this face because their faces are so good. This side I had been putting off for a really long time. So you can see there's 20 days between the two sides. I was so worried about messing this thing up, and then I did. So, you know, it's fine. It's whatever. I was going to record this for a tutorial on Patreon, but I was just so anxious about it. This is the last painting I painted in this book. The last page has a painting on it, but I did it earlier. So there was a lot of pressure to make sure I didn't mess this up as the last painting in this sketchbook, leave off on a good note and have good memories about it. I did so much work on this sketch. If you've been around the channel for a while, details are not my thing. My ADHD likes to get in the way. I get really bored with repetitive things. So painting individual feathers is really hard. So I was like, what I'll do is I'll make a sketch, and I'll put it over here for you so you can see it. I'll make a sketch that I do all the work ahead of time. That way when I go over it, I won't get overwhelmed, I won't get frustrated. And I did it with a pretty dark, like brown pencil. I went over with such a light layer of brown on the first wash, and it just all like got muddied right away. So it was really hard to see. We have such dark values in here. It's really my fault for not planning better. I should have done like an ink or something. But anyway, I lost my sketch almost immediately. I got really discouraged. I ended up making myself finish the piece, but one of these days I'll do a proper feather piece and not rush the feathers. But I still like the vibes here, and I really love it as a spread with all these different faces of these really cool eagles. Then we come to the very last page that I kind of teased earlier on. The last painting was actually painted in January, whereas I finished this in March. But I did this in January. Again, I needed this side of the sketchbook to record a tutorial. My patron Nancy requested an Oriole, and so I was obliging by painting one, and I painted the whole Oriole first. It wasn't like intentionally on the last page. This is just the page I had available. I went through the whole painting, and I closed the book, and I realized I did a yellow bird on the very first page. So I really love that it kind of bookends. You can see the skill level that's increased between now and then. It's not quite fair since I was traveling and using a brush, but still, there's a markable difference there. And that's the sketchbook. That's the whole thing. I'm really proud that I finished it almost in its entirety. I know there were a couple little things in there I didn't finish, but you know, for the most part, I finished. I'm really happy with it. It's nice to be able to look back and be proud of it, to be able to see my growth over that time period. I'm not one for speed, so yeah, this took me 1.5 years, but that's fine. I was working on 2 other sketchbooks at the same time, and I feel like it served me really, really well. If you would like to see the actual sketchy sketchbook, let me know. I don't know if that's something you would all like to see on this channel, but this one has more of my sketches and mixed media studies and all of that. It's not quite done yet, but it'll be done soon. And I'd love to know if you'd like to see that, or if you'd like me to focus on the watercolor content. So let me know what you think. Either way, this one is finished, which means I need a new one. I've already picked out the stickers. We'll be ready to start this one soon. Little iguana from the last sketchbook. I love that carryover. Oh, it makes me happy. So this will be the new sketchbook. Haven't started anything in it. Also, let me know, do you want some more like sit and sketch with me videos? A little sketch with me time. We haven't done that a whole lot on the channel, but if you'd like me to start with this new sketchbook, record some sessions so we can just hang out, have some tea, have some snacks, do some painting, I'd be happy to do that too. All right, I've taken up enough of your time today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one, and until then, happy painting.